This is the next video in my series on software testing and test automation. This is a technical diagram that shows my initial thought process, sort of like a mental model on how I like to approach test automation. It's a starting point. If you're familiar with client-server architecture, where a client interacts with a server, the server could be a web service, a database, user interface, or other software components, then this client is what interacts with the server. Sometimes the client is provided by the development team, and sometimes the QA team creating the automation needs to create the client. And this triangle represents the test cases themselves. One thing to note about the client is it's very compartmentalized. If I want to fix something or completely replace by pulling something out and putting something back in, because it's so compartmentalized, it's easier to understand, it's easier to do. This architecture is what's called loosely coupled. Loosely mean it's loosely coupled to the implementation. The implementation is easy to change. Another thing about this is it's single responsibility. Each component does one thing and one thing only. The test cases represented by the triangle, what's important in test automation is the amount of coverage so that you feel confident that it's covered a lot of test cases. You get good coverage by having a lot of use cases implemented. I call that a breadth of use cases. And then you get a depth of coverage by adding data providers, test data files, that kind of stuff. So you get breadth and depth. This here is what I actually see other people implementing automation. It's kind of like a elastic band ball where if you need to learn something or figure out how to change something, you have to strip away the upper layers to dig in just to find out what it does. And then when you make a change on the inside, you need to make sure it didn't impact here, didn't impact here. This implementation is what's called tightly coupled. It means it's difficult to figure out what it's doing. It's difficult to make changes. It's tightly coupled and it violates the single responsibility principle. Another principle I see broken pretty often is what's called fail fast versus fail slow. In test automation and running test cases, you want to fail fast. When you've got a sprinter that's running a 1 mile race and he falls on his face right at the beginning of the race, you know immediately that there's a problem. And in this case, his shoelaces are untied. But I've seen in many other people's automation, they do fail slow, where the test case, the runner in this case, falls on his face right at the end of the race. He took 5 minutes to run a race, fell on his face, and you don't know, did he fail because his shoelaces are untied or because he's exhausted? You want to fail fast so that you can fix stuff. There's somebody, Donald Rumsfeld. He used to be the Secretary of State for the United States, and he has a famous quote: "There are knowns, there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and there are unknown unknowns." When I write automation and test cases, I like to have mostly known knowns with some unknown unknowns. But a lot of automation I see other people do, there's a lot of known unknowns and also a lot of unknown unknowns. You want to avoid this. When I do automation and testing and something fails, I like to leave a lot of breadcrumbs so that it traces back to where the failure happens. Whereas a lot of automation systems is like a pile of worms that you need to dig through to figure out what's wrong, where it went wrong. It's sort of like that parking lot game where you got to shuffle everything around just to get the pink car out of the thing. But with the automation that I like to do is it's like a funnel. You drop a marble in the funnel and it spins around the funnel, but gravity takes it down and slows it down and eventually goes through the chute because it makes it easier for a new person or a person with less experience to learn and maintain my automation system. As a matter of fact, I try to even make it like a straw. You put the marble down the straw and it leads it directly to the solution. I've had a lot of experience where I've gone onto existing projects that had existing automation. And in a couple of different scenarios, the automation was created by some senior developers, senior test automation experts, and they were so complicated. And when I joined the project, I incrementally improved the automation. And the very, very next day after I did that, the most junior person on the team, a person who had a reputation for struggling, he was able to start making contributions to this automation system, and many other people were able to make contributions. You have to remember when you're writing automation and doing testing, it has to work. But also, when other people are working with these systems and they need to figure stuff out, those people are getting paid a high hourly or yearly salary. And so you need to make it efficient for them. And that's what I aim to do. And that's why you should consider me, Scott Wilson, for an interview.